Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Spurs Up. I'm Jack Taylor.
And I'm Matt Pumbaka.
And we're here with the USC Gamecock Football team beat writer for the state newspaper, Josh Kendall. Josh, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we are talking to Josh about the state of our Gamecock football team. Day before the spring game, they're going to showcase what they've done this offseason and how much work they've put in. Josh, what do you think is one of the biggest concerns going into this season? Anything they need to fix over the offseason from now till the end of the season?
Well, Will Muschamp's biggest concern is safety position. That's two reasons. Number one, they don't have a lot of safety. Number two, Will Muschamp is essentially the safeties coach. That's kind of his bread and butter. But he said last week, this week actually, that there's only one guy that he feels like at that position he can play championship football with right now. That's Stephen Montack. So, Javon Charleston, a former walk-on who was a wide receiver 2 years ago, will start probably at the other spot on Saturday, and is a guy who's got to prove to coaches every opportunity he gets that he could man that job in the fall. Jalen Dickerson, who's a guy they've really liked for 2 years but hadn't been able to get on the field because of injuries, is out with a shoulder, but will be back in the fall. He'll get a look. They've talked about Jemias Williams, everybody's favorite recruit 2 years ago, the starting nickelback last year, moving to safety. Everybody said, oh no, we don't want to move Jemias to safety, but they may not have a choice. Now, I think if they get some other bodies, they've got a graduate transfer from Rice who will play some safety next year. If they can find safeties, I think Jemias goes back to nickel. But right now, the defensive backfield's kind of in flux.
And then how big are the holes that are being left by these people going into the draft? You know, Hayden Hurst, Sky Moore, Taylor Stallworth, and what are they doing to try to fill these holes?
Well, I think the defensive line depth, the interior defensive line depth, because not just Taylor, who is a very solid guy, but Uric Jones and Dante Stallworth, guys who played significant snaps for them in the middle of the defensive line. They've got to find those somewhere. So right now they've got Javon Kinlaw, who is an all-SEC caliber type guy, could really have a breakout year. They've got Kobe Smith and Kier Thomas, who they feel good about, but they need 5 or 6 guys that they can rotate at that position because it's such a physically demanding position. So that means freshmen like J.J. Enigbare, like Rick Sandage, who will be here in the fall, like Tyreek Johnson, are going to have to get ready and play significant snaps on the interior of the defensive line, which is probably the toughest place for a first-year player to play because it's so physical.
Yeah, these young guys getting a chance to play, sticking with the defense, but going up to the linebacker position. Who do you think is going to fill in for Sky Moore at that weak side linebacker position?
Well, in that spot, you're looking at Sherrod Green or Eldridge Thompson. Sherrod won't play Saturday because of an ankle injury, but my money would be on him starting at weak side linebacker when the season starts. But the guy who's kind of taking over the role of leader of the defense, leader of the linebacker, is T.J. Brunson. There's another guy. I think that they've got 2 frontline defensive players who, at the end of the year, people will talk about as all-conference players: Kinlaw and T.J. Brunson. T.J. Brunson's a really good football player. They have designated him as the captain, the voice of the defense. I mean, he could have a 100-tackle type season. He's a really good player.
So you think Brunson and Kinlaw, those could be some of the biggest surprises for this Gamecock season?
They won't surprise the coaching staff, and they probably won't surprise South Carolina diehards who saw him play some last year. But the rest of the SEC, those are the types of guys who people around the SEC will be saying, well, you know, I didn't realize that guy was that good.
Yeah, those 2 guys had great years last year, and hopefully they do take that next step and are leaders of the defense.
Yeah, and Kinlaw particularly. This defense needs somebody who can help stop the run. Running the ball in crucial situations and stopping the run in crucial situations are the 2 things that have hamstrung this team for the last 2 years. They've got to get the run game turned around, and they've got to stop people from just being able to run the ball down their throat, and Javon Kinlaw can stop people.
Now, are there any other surprises or players that maybe have had a big improvement from this season or last season to this season that you think maybe on offense or defense?
I think the guys that you hope, if you're Will Muschamp or a South Carolina fan, have made big jumps are Ortre Smith and Shy Smith. And you'll get a chance to see them a lot on Saturday, I would think, because Brian Edwards been a little banged up with the shoulder. He'll play, but I would think they're real careful with him. Debo Samuel has done hardly anything this summer except skeleton work, no contact. Debo is a known commodity. They just want to get Debo to the fall healthy. They want 13 games out of Debo this fall, so they're not worried about what he does this spring. But in the fall, they're going to need more than Debo and Brian. And if Ortre and Shy, 2 guys again who we saw a little bit of what they could do, if they take that next step, that gives this passing game, which we're told is going to look a little different, more options because Debo's going to get a lot of attention next year.
Yeah, and could you talk about the running back system that the Gamecocks have right now? It's kind of a 3-headed monster, but we do know that Rico's been sidelined as well.
Right.
Give us a little bit more light on what that running back situation is like.
It's been the same question, the same issue this is going into the third year now. They've got 3 running backs that they tell us are really good and can get the job done, and they get to the fall and it doesn't happen. Now, I'm not laying that at the feet of those 3 guys necessarily. That's an offensive line issue. There are all kinds of things that go into that. But in Will Muschamp's first 2 years, South Carolina was finished 13th and 14th in yards per carry. That's got to change. You've got to be able to run the ball more consistently. You can go faster on offense. You can change offensive coordinators every week. If you can't run the ball consistently, you're not going to be able to do the other things you want to do. So right now, Rico's out with a hamstring. He's missing reps. He's missing time. Tyson Williams looks to, based on the little bit of practice that we see in the spring, be the number 1 guy, and A.J. Turner's the number 2 guy. But A.J. Turner proved last year that, when it's, end of game time, he's the guy that Will Muschamp trusts the most. So Tyson Williams has got to be more consistent. I think people believe that Tyson Williams, because of his size, because of some of the snapshots of talent we've seen, could be and should be that guy. But he's got to earn his coach's trust by doing it more consistently. And that doesn't just mean in the fall. I mean, he can do that Saturday in the spring game.
Now, with that yards per carry issue, do you think that was a issue with the offensive coordinator because we know he loved to run the ball a lot and loved to run that halfback read, or was it an issue with our running backs?
It's everything. It's play calling, it's running backs, and it's offensive line. They have not moved the middle of the offensive line the way they want to. They have not gotten the push that they want to in the middle of their offensive line for 2 years now. Alan Knott started 42 games at center and was a stalwart in the middle of the offensive line, but he was a little bit smaller guy. They moved Donnell Stanley, a veteran, was a senior, actually reclassified as a junior because of a medical redshirt season, but he's a 310, 315-pound guy, big country strong guy. Moved him from guard to center. You may see that help as much as anything, because if you can't get some push on the offensive front, or at least hold your ground in the middle, you can't run that inside zone very effectively. And everything that almost everybody does, it just is built around, to some degree, being able to get a few yards with that inside zone when you need it and make that be a legitimate thing that defenses have to worry about. So South Carolina, I think it starts, frankly, with the guards and the center have got to play better than they have for the last 2 years.
With new offensive coordinator Brian McKinnon, they've been talking about tempo and going fast with this offense. How fast do you think they'll go, and how fast should we see them tomorrow in the spring game?
I think you'll see them go fast at times. This is sort of the million-dollar question for me, because when Will Muschamp was hired, he went to the podium 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, and said, we want to go fast on offense. Well, for the last 2 years, they've gone really slow.
Yeah,
I mean, they've gone really slow. And there are various reasons for that. You can, whatever they may be. But now they've really seemed committed to, we're going to go fast. We're going fast. This is what we're about. Now, I should backtrack a little bit. They don't necessarily say fast. They say tempo. So what tempo means is we're going to, at the end of a play, we're going to hustle, we're not going to huddle, and we're going to get to the line of scrimmage fast. Now, we may snap the ball right then, or we may wait at that point. But what we do by getting to the ball fast is we make the defense line up. We make the defensive coordinator make a quick call, and then we feel like we establish the tempo from there. So you saw the Los Angeles Rams do this with some success. Now, it's a different ball game because in the NFL, they can communicate via headset. But the Rams got to the line of scrimmage really quick, and then the coaches basically looked over the defense and made all the play calls and put it in their ear. That's what you'll see South Carolina do. If they like tempo, if they like going fast, you'll see them get to the ball, snap it, and run a play. But sometimes you'll see them get to the ball, and then everybody will stand up, and they'll look to the sidelines, and the offensive coaches will figure out what they like and what they want to change.
Now, have you seen any issues with, since Debo has been sidelined and isn't getting that much playing time, has there been any issues with trying to conform to this new offensive coordinator, the issue, like trying to establish a relationship between the offensive coordinator and Debo?
I don't think so. That is Brian McClendon's job. Debo Samuel is, his job is to catch the ball. If you can't, in terms of a rapport and a feel and all that stuff, that's Brian's job. If you can't get the ball to your best offensive player, you're not a very good offensive coordinator. And I think Brian will do a fine job. So I don't think the missed time will factor into that. I think where the missed time maybe hurts is just simply timing and familiarity with your quarterback. And Debo, Bentley and Debo and all those guys will run tons of routes this summer and should be able to sort all that out.
Yeah, and Brian McClendon was the wide receivers coach before being named the offensive coordinator.
Right.
And Josh, it was a real pleasure having you on the show today. Until next time, folks, Spurs up.